Hello everyone, this is Bill Griffin. Welcome to the Different Take Podcast. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, and share. Today I have with me Michael Rudnick, who is candidate for Gwinnett County, Georgia School Board District 2. If you don't live in Georgia, this still is pretty pertinent stuff to talk about. And Michael grew up in Marietta, went to University of Georgia, managed family business, was a area manager for Enterprise, and lived in Kentucky for a while. Now is the fleet manager for the city of Lawrenceville. Hello, Michael. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Bill?
I'm doing fine. So let's start with, why are you a candidate for school board?
That's a great question. Sometimes I ask myself that. But I've been very active in the school district and working with the school board really since the pandemic started in March of 2020. When the district shut down the schools, I have a special needs son, and it was very critical for his education that he be in a school building with the teachers, helping him with the needs that he has. So myself and a group of parents, we really started with a protest once school was called off for the beginning of the 2020-2021 school year. I met some other very active parents, not at the time, but they are now, being involved with the school system. And so throughout the last 2 years, I have been to many school board meetings, probably 10 or 15 school board meetings, spoken at numerous school board meetings, and really tried to bring a voice to parents in the community of what some of the changes that we wanted to see are. And so once I got as far as I felt I could get, and I wasn't seeing the changes that I wanted to see, I made the decision that I was going to run for school board. And I really just made that decision in January of this year. I didn't have any intentions of that before that time, but I'm a parent. I've been involved. I'm knowledgeable about the situation, so I felt the best way to make a change is to be on the other side of the podium and to and be one of the school board members.
And what are the school board members now? Could you talk about them a little bit? What they're not doing that you think the parents want to see them do?
Sure, absolutely. So, again, go back to it started with shutting down the schools. That was the first straw that really got a lot of parental involvement. That was a bad decision to start the 2020-2021 school year. They've done things such as limited the amount of speakers at school board meetings. They've implemented digital school days for every child in the system. 6 school days a year are being done as digital school days, where you get no teacher interaction whatsoever. It still counts as one of our 180 school days per year that the children are required to attend. They've just put policies in place that have hindered the school system. We've dropped from a top 10 school system in the state to 66th in the state out of 180 school districts and 159 counties. We're almost out of the top third of the state, which is a reflection of the school board that we have as a whole right now. And some of the bickering that goes on back and forth. They fired our superintendent. We had a superintendent that was in place for 25 years, the longest tenured superintendent in the country, rather. And they really, for no reason, they fired him with a year left on his contract when he had already said that he wasn't going to renew his contract and he was going to retire. So we're paying him $530,000, and we've hired another superintendent that we're paying the exact same salary to with 1/12 of the experience of being a superintendent. So we're paying double, and that's just fiscal irresponsibility. Those are some of the things that the board has done to show that many of them are not qualified to be on the board.
I noticed a lot of parents who were upset about the superintendent getting fired, but the thing I noticed in that particular meeting was there was no calls given by any of the board members, were there?
None whatsoever. And it's funny, I was actually the very first speaker to speak immediately following the firing of Mr. Wilbanks. So the vote was taken in public as a roll call vote to fire Mr. Wilbanks. The very next thing that happened was public speakers, and I was the very first speaker. I had to change my speech on the fly because I was so taken back by the decision that they had made. There had been rumors for a couple months prior to that this was going to take place, and it just hadn't yet. So he was fired in June of 2021, and he had already said he was going to retire at the end of June 2022. So he, at this point right now, he would have 3 or 4 months left on his contract. We really felt like he could have been involved in the process of choosing a successor, helping train that individual, and really putting the school district on the right track with a new superintendent. The one that we have now, he's been in place for 6 or 8 months. In my opinion, the jury's still out. There's been some decisions that are made that are subpar, in my opinion. The decision to mask children for the entire school year was a decision that it was a very poor one. It really hurt a lot of children, 180,000 children, not to give them the choice for this entire year. And up until just a couple weeks ago, that was a requirement in the district, was that every child, faculty member and teacher and staff wear a mask the entire day for 8 hours a day. When we had proof in numbers that wasn't beneficial to the students.
But the masks have ended?
They have, yeah. Just about 10 days ago, they made an announcement in correspondence with the CDC's communication when the CDC lowered their standards of high, moderate, and low transmission. When the CDC lowered their standard, the district made their change. There was every piece of information out there that without that, the district would not have made that change. The district was intent on being one of the last districts in the state to have a mask mandate in place when every other county, with the exception of DeKalb that touches Gwinnett County, had lifted their mandate and made it optional for students to choose whether they wanted to wear a mask or not. Our county has done that for the last 7 months, decided that they were going to mandate that.
So with the incumbents on the school board, is there an incumbent you're running against? Is he running or?
Yeah, so today is March the 8th. Yesterday was the first day of qualifying. And to tell you a quick little aside on that, I went in to qualify the Gwinnett County. It's a nonpartisan election now. You qualify the Gwinnett County Elections Office. My opponent, the incumbent, came in and sat right next to me, and we filled out our paperwork together. So we had a chance to talk for a few seconds there. But yes, he is also qualified for the position as the incumbent, and I am also qualified and officially on the ballot as of yesterday.
What is he doing in particular that you think you'll be better for the school board?
So I'll tell you what I think I'll do better. I'll definitely be more of a voice for the parents. I'll be more vocal. I'll hold other board members and our superintendent accountable for the actions and the decisions that they make. I understand being at a disadvantage philosophically and possibly politically with other people that are on the school board, but I think there's a way to make decisions that when groups of parents are asking you to let them be heard, and they really are going months and years at a time without feeling like they're being heard, I think there needs to be a change, and I think there needs to be someone in place that will allow that group of parents and that group of teachers and that group of students to be heard, because there's a large number of each of those groups that don't feel that way. So again, holding the superintendent and other board members accountable for the decisions that they're making. I want to bring a special needs voice to the school board. I've been going to school board meetings for over 2 years. There's never been an agenda item on special needs programs, special needs updates, special needs anything really. And so I want to look at the matters through a different lens. 20 to 25% of our school system has an IEP or a 504 in place. That's a huge number. That's almost 50,000 students that have an IEP or a 504 in place. And you have to look at things different for those students. There has to be different measurables put in place. There has to be different things put in place to assist those students. And so I want to be one of the people that helps with that viewpoint and brings that to the table when we're making decisions.
I noticed a lot of parents are really upset about the mask, and I think people, it's 2 years in, so people may think that the masks are over, but a lot of people have been thinking that for 18 months, and there is still a group of people that think, a group of parents and teachers that want the kids masked, right?
Yeah, and so if you want to mask yourself, my opinion is that's great. You can mask yourself. If you want to mask your child, that's your decision to make for your child. But you shouldn't be allowed to make it for other children, and you shouldn't be allowed to make it for other people. It should be choice, and mask choice is what I've always fought for. One of my platform items is in-person education with mask choice. I never thought I would say that. I never thought that would be an issue, but unfortunately it is an issue when we decided to do things like have digital days and shut down schools for periods of time and have digital learning. It's not fair to the students. And to force students again to wear a mask for the last 24 months is also not fair. It needs to be a choice, and that's all I've ever fought for, is everyone to have the choice to do what they think is best for themselves and their family.
What was the reaction when the parents and the students found out that the masks were optional?
I was with a group of parents when that phone call came out. My wife, we were at a restaurant, and we were at a kickoff for another candidate, or a meeting for another candidate in District 4. And my wife put the phone on speaker, and we didn't know the announcement was coming from the district. But I literally saw parents cry. I saw kids jumping up and down. I haven't seen that much joy on some kids' faces in 2 years, of how excited they were. And parents were telling me that they have students in first and second grade that have never been to school without a mask. And that's just not fair. They need to have the choice, and they need to do what's best for themselves.
I saw, I think there's this video where kids found out, and it's a short video, and they're jumping for joy and screaming, all that kind of, I've never seen a reaction from like that from kids. And the first thing I thought of was, they're not going to remember that. What they're going to remember is the pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was
the
Las
awful
Vegas.
times. That was, to me, the joy is an indicator of what a bad situation it's been for a lot of people, because this mask, some people view them as it's not a big deal, when that's not the case for so many people.
Yeah, and I think the best way to tell is if you have children in school now, and especially if you go through the car rider line, look how many children outside that school are walking out of the school without a mask on. You give someone the choice and they make a different decision. You force a child to do something and they do what they're asked to do because they're compliant. And children listen. And they listen to authority figures, and teachers are some of our biggest authority figures. And children look up to teachers and do what they ask, and administrators and their parents as well. So when we force children to do things, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy with it. And we gave children the choice, and it shows by the numbers of the kids that are walking out of school unmasked of what they would have chosen the entire time.
And the school board members, and did any of them advocate to these school administration and superintendent to have the mask removed? And if they did, what was that like?
It was very slight in my opinion. There were situations where it was brought up in conversation in the public format, but I can tell you that I would have pushed a lot harder. I would have been at the protests with these parents. I would have seen the pain in their eyes and what they were looking to do. As a school board member, I would have stood with them, and I would have been a lot more vocal, and I would have pushed to remove these mandates as hard as I possibly could. If it was my last working wish that I had, I would have pushed for this, to let these children stop being tortured by this.
So have you had any sort of, first time doing this, if you had any sort of attacks against you, and what's that been like?
It's different. It all comes from social media. I haven't had any phone calls or texts or anything like that. But obviously I set up a social media page for my political campaign. And there have been some people that have come on there and attacked me. I'll tell you that I've done things everything I've done has tried to be positive for the last 2 years. I let people voice their opinion. Certainly you're not going to make everybody happy. People are entitled to their opinions. They're allowed to have different opinions, and I'll respect that. I'm not going to get into it with a constituent or someone else from the district.
Well, what's the substance of their attacks, if there are any?
Not really. I mean, in my opinion, there's not really much substance outside of, I don't believe in masks and it's going to hurt other kids and other teachers. People want to know why I want to run for the school board and what experience I bring to the table and things like that. So it's in my opinion, it's baseless. It's not anything of substance. And it's not anything that I certainly wouldn't be afraid to answer to anybody.
Yeah, well, I have not seen any sort of statistical difference between the places that masked and the places that didn't. Did any of the school boards or members of the superintendent present anything like that?
No, as a matter of fact, to the contrary, groups of parents have presented evidence that show that if you mask children in situations, your transmission numbers can actually be higher. We compare very well to Cobb County in terms of size and geography and things like that. And that district at times, well, not at times, they've always been mask optional. And the majority of the time, their COVID numbers have been less than ours. And we've masked our children for the last 2 years. So there was a lot of data out there that was presented and ignored, unfortunately.
Well, the government-run schools, shouldn't the onus be on the government to prove that the masks are necessary instead of the parents proving that trying to prove that the masks aren't necessary?
Yeah, you're right. And I'll tell you that leads me into another subject, which is school choice, which is being fought for hard by our legislatures down at the Gold Dome in Atlanta. There's a bill going through today and it's moving through Senate committee today, and that's to give parents and students a choice of what school they attend by taking their state dollars and using it as an institution of their choice, or homeschool, or for tutoring or books or other ways of education. And so that's something that I believe in. I would not be afraid of school choice if I were on the Gwinnett County School Board, because I think it would make the school district better, and I think the cream would rise to the top rather, and I think the best school districts would be sought after, and that's where I want Gwinnett County. I want people to want to come to Gwinnett County from other districts. I want people from other counties to want to come to Gwinnett County. I want people in private schools to want to come to Gwinnett County. I want people that homeschool to want to put their kids back in the public school system, because we pay our teachers the best. We have the best teachers in the world, and we got the best school system in the state. So I'm not afraid of that at all.
So on the school board or school choice, why shouldn't the county do the same thing as the state?
In terms of school choice?
Yes.
So if the state passes the law, the county will have to honor that. And because it's the state dollars that the parents would have choice over. So each child gets funding through state, federal, and local taxes, and that helps fund each student in the school system.
So what's the percentage? Is something like $2.4 billion budget or something?
For the school system, yeah, it's I believe it's $2.2 billion is the budget. So it wouldn't be a percentage of the school budget; it would be a percentage of the state budget.
Right. Well, what's the percentage of the 2.2? What's the percentage local, state, federal?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I maybe should.
Whatever the local amount is, or why would it make a good idea to say, okay, you want to go to private school? Here's some money.
Yeah. So what would happen is the money that comes in from the federal government as well as local government will still go to the school system. So even if the child doesn't go to school there, and they choose to take their state funds and go to private school or homeschool or whatever's best for them, or a different school district, the school system will still receive the federal and local dollars. So they will receive that money and not have to educate that child. So on a per capita basis, each student would receive more funds in the public school system. And that's beneficial to the students that decide to stay in the public school system, or in that specific public school system, because they'll have more dollars per student, which is a benefit. The $6,000 that students would receive for the school choice money certainly is not going to fund private school as a whole, or going to fund homeschooling as a whole, but it's a start. It puts them in a better position to be able to afford what they think is the best option. As a special needs parent, I believe the Gwinnett County school system is the best option for me right now. So if this were an option for myself, I would probably still keep my son in the public school system. If a better option presented itself, at least I would have those funds available to me. Special needs kids do already have one option, which is called SB 10 money. But this is an expansion of basically that program that would allow all students in the state access to those funds. Now, certainly there'll be a monetary cap on it at the state level, because of course we can't have every child in the state take their state dollars and go to a private institution. So my understanding with the bill is that there'll be a budgetary cap on it, and if more students apply for those funds than would exceed the budgetary cap on that, then they would lower the amount, but they would give every student access to those funds, but possibly a lower amount. But it's not to exceed a certain amount for the state budget.
Well, a lot of parents would. They're going to make the choice not to send their child to public school if it's viable.
But
if it's just about what that number is.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why. I don't understand the opposition to this. So what do you think any other board members are on board with school choice, and to what degree, and that sort of thing?
I would doubt it. I would doubt that other school board members have looked at this or would be on board. I certainly can't speak for them.
Right. What's the opposition to that?
That it's going to bankrupt the school system. That's the fear, is that it's going to bankrupt the school system. When
in fact, they'd actually have more dollars per student.
Per student, yeah, absolutely. So you can be for school choice and not be against the public school system, and vice versa. There's nothing wrong with giving parents the choice on what's best for their child. That's what this country's founded on, is doing what we think is best, not being forced into an option that could be substandard. And the Gwinnett County Public School System overall is a good school system. And I believe in the Gwinnett County Public School System, but there are school systems in the state that don't, that they're 180th out of 180 or 179th out of 180. Those parents deserve a choice on where to send their children. Because of their zip code, they're forced into sending their child to that public school system, or because they can't afford another option, they're forced into sending their child to that public school system when that public school system is failing. They have a failing grade. Obviously, they're looked over by certain entities, but those students, unfortunately, have much less of a chance than other students in other districts.
See, another issue that I saw when I was reviewing these board meetings was that parents are upset about the fact that their kids are being taught that there's, in an uncritical way, that systematic racism exists.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's not a theory.
Right.
It's real.
Right.
And you see this parade of kids at the board meetings,
mm-hmm.
which are really quite, I find them kind of self-serving
mm-hmm.
to the administration.
Right.
Because, they're not going to talk about the bad stuff.
Right.
And so, but there's this parade of kids, even during the public comment section, that display this. Are parents, are there parents that are upset about that, or are there parents that are upset if that weren't taught?
I hope these children are thinking on their own, and they're speaking on their own behalf. My child has spoken at the board meeting. I typed his speech, but I certainly did not write his speech. And he spoke about what was important to him. He's 13, again, he's special needs. But it's been said that CRT, or critical race theory, is not taught in our school district. And it's been uncovered through just a couple months ago that there was a syllabus that specifically touted that they were going to teach critical race theory, or teach through that lens.
Yeah, I did an episode of that.
Yeah, the district refuted that, and they said that syllabus had been pulled before it had ever been taught. But there's been multiple instances that have been shown by parents and through open records requests that show certain concepts and certain teachings are being taught in our school system. And frankly, to teach someone that they're only going to amount to what the color of their skin is wrong. It's unfair, and it's teaching someone that they're either an oppressor or they're oppressed, strictly based on the color of their skin, and that can't happen. We can't have teachers that go off script and teach those types of things. So while I think history needs to be taught, it needs to be taught accurately and fairly, and all students need to learn U.S. history and Georgia history and world history. It just needs to be taught accurately and fairly, and the teachers need to do what they're doing in the classrooms, which is a wonderful job of teaching our students. There doesn't need to be any mention of, again, critical race theory, that which the basis of it is that if you're a person of color, that you're inherently oppressed, and if you're not a person of color, you're inherently an oppressor, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it's not your fault, it's just the way that you're born.
It's the concept of, the other thing I noticed is with some school board members, they believe in this concept of equity. For example, one of the school board members mentioned that some kids were disproportionately disciplined for trivial matters, but teachers generally don't discipline the students. They won't go through that process if they're not truly being disruptive. Well, the parent of the child may not think that's a trivial thing at all if they're the one that's disrupting class, not to mention the ones that are sitting through class and trying to learn and they're being disrupted. So this concept of equity, is that something that parents are upset about and thinking about things that way?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need equal outcomes. That's not something that we need to have as a society. We need to have a level playing field, and we need to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity. But we're never going to have equal outcomes. There's different people with different abilities. There's different children that cause different disruptions, and each child needs to be taught individually to their strengths and certainly to their weaknesses. And teachers, those are the things that in my opinion, teachers want to focus on. They want to focus on helping the students. And if there's disruptions in the classroom, then we need to handle them individually. If there are multiple disruptors, then there's a progressive discipline plan, obviously. There needs to be oversight into our discipline, which there is now. And I see the metrics every single month when I go to the school board meetings, the 2 o'clock work sessions, and I see the dashboard that they've put up that shows the different metrics of free and reduced lunch discipline versus non-free and reduced lunch, and you see special needs discipline situations versus non-special needs, male, female, different races. So they're presenting the data, certainly. And if there's an individual situation where a child is a disruptor, there's a process that the district goes through. It can go all the way to a tribunal where it's heard by multiple people and a decision is made.
Well, typically, most parents they don't want their children to disrupt the class.
Of course, yeah, you would think so.
You would think so. So what is, one more question on this, is the idea that there's a lot of teachers that just can't seem, and I suppose it's some minority, you can tell me what you think, but they can't help themselves from inserting their personal politics or their beliefs into the classroom. Does the administration talk about those things or present those things to the school board?
The administration would handle those things. If it needed to get to a school board level, then it's gotten way too far and way too out of hand, in my opinion. But the administration, our teachers are some of the best teachers we have. Are there some bad actors within the school system? Without a doubt. Are there teachers that are going to influence children one way or another? There are, and that doesn't need to happen right or left. We need teachers to do what they're best at, teach. We don't need teachers being psychologists. We don't need teachers being counselors. We need them to do what they want to do, which is teach. I've heard from so many teachers that say, we just want to teach. We don't want all this other social emotional learning. We don't want to teach these other subjects. We just want to teach the subjects which we're passionate about, and getting that information to these students and getting them ready for the college preparatory track.
So does you have a complaint with parents that teachers do insert their politics or other things into the class that they ought not to?
As a regular
Parents complain about that?
As a regular citizen, we've seen instances of that. And we try to bring that to the school board or the administration's attention. We've had teachers that have again inserted their political views or try to teach things through a lens to help steer the children's beliefs one way or another. We had a school board member that just a week or two ago said she wanted to use education for indoctrination and power control. That's a quote, again, indoctrination and power control. We had an individual that came.
Which school board member was that?
Therese Johnson. We had an individual that came to speak on that subject and gave 2 quotes. One was from Dr. Martin Luther King and was a very powerful quote. The other one was from Dr. Therese Johnson. And his microphone was shut off at the board meeting. He wasn't allowed to finish his 3 minutes of time at the board meeting.
She's the chairman.
She's the chairman. And she chose to shut down his mic and not let him finish because she said that he was calling out a specific board member that was herself up on the board. And she didn't want to hear it. But her own words were she wanted to use education for indoctrination and power control.
And prior to her being elected, I did see her at a meeting doing exactly the same thing to the sitting board members.
Very similar, yes. Yeah, you can certainly
So
do.
she called their names out.
She absolutely did call their names out. Yes, if I remember correctly, Carol Boyce, Dr. Murphy, and Ms. Radloff. I think those are the three members that were called out specifically by name.
And accused of being racist or something or other.
Yes, white supremacist, I think was the word that was used.
I see. Yeah, they say. Do you think that the teachers ought to be talking about any students' sexual wants, desires, preferences, anything like that?
You know, there's a point in school where we do have to teach sex ed. I don't think that teachers should, outside of sex education, be addressing those subjects. That's for the home, that's for the parents, that's for the guardians. It doesn't need to be addressed in school. We certainly don't need to be teaching kindergartners, first graders, second graders, third graders, anything sexual. The material does not need to be in our libraries. They don't need to be learning about these subjects through books that they can check out at the local, or not the local library, but their school library. It needs to be taught at a certain point in middle school, but it needs to be taught. An abstinence-based program is what needs to be taught. We don't need comprehensive sex education, and we don't need anyone outside of health teachers or teachers teaching that subject broaching those subjects.
Describe the fiduciary responsibilities you have.
Yeah, so we've got a $2.2 million budget. The board is obviously responsible for okaying and approving that budget. We've got a great staff at GCPS that each department will come up with their own budget and work through that process. We've got some Joe Heffron, who is in charge of getting the budget to the board and making sure that we balance our budget and that we're able to keep the millage rate as low as possible. This past year, fortunately, they were able to reduce the millage rate, which was great. But the responsibility falls on the board to approve that budget and make sure that funds are allocated for different departments and different programs. Things like school resource officers obviously are very, very important. Those are some things that have been talked about, defunding those programs, and that's just unacceptable to me. It's something I would never let happen on the school board. We need to make sure our teachers are paid what they need to be paid to do their job fully. We need to make sure that they have the access to resources that they need to do their job. Teachers don't need to be spending their own money to outfit their classrooms and buy supplies for their classrooms. I know that happens. I know that takes place, and that's one of the things that I'd like to look into as a way to fund those teachers fully to be able to teach their classes in the best manner that they can.
Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
Not that I can think of. I mean, there's obviously a lot of subjects on the school board that are extremely important and be very difficult to cover in 30 minutes. But I think we've hit the high-level subjects. You know, some fiduciary responsibilities, some curriculum issues. I did talk about my special needs son, that I'd like to bring that lens to the school board and look at things through that perspective and make sure that segment of children is being taken care of and getting the programs that they need to be able to make it through school. So we have hit the subjects that I wanted to hit.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you talking to me, Michael.
Absolutely, Bill.
And we've been talking to Michael Rudnick, who's the candidate for Gwinnett County School Board District 2. And this is Different Take Podcast with Bill Griffin. Please subscribe, like, and share. Check out our episodes come out Tuesday and Thursday. And thank you.
People can reach me at www.rudnickgwinnett.com. They can email me at michael@rudnickgwinnett.com. And you can reach me on Facebook at Michael Rudnick for Gwinnett County School Board. Please like my page. We often have announcements come out through there, ways to volunteer and donate and help the campaign.